We are recording the interview of Amy Dodds. This interview is being conducted by David Morse from the Wright State University Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at the Crown Plaza in Dayton, Ohio. It is 2:50 p.m. on July 11th, 2019. All right, Amy, we are here actually, you're talking on behalf of your father. Do you want to go ahead and talk about who your father is and just start off with where and when he was born?
Yes. So my father is James I. Baginski. He's widely known as Bagger, so I wanted to make sure I get that in there. He was born in Baltimore, Maryland, 1932. Spent his childhood in the Baltimore area, specifically in Towson, Maryland. Went to Towson High School. Actually went to University of Maryland. He was on an ROTC program, which kind of got, obviously, his brain somewhat headed in the military direction. While he was there, he did cross country, at some point he did boxing. He did several, I think his major was like agricultural studies or something. Oh, no, animal husbandry, even worse. So he did he had cow judging classes and all sorts of interesting stuff like that. And going through some of his memorabilia, I found some, I guess, ribbons and placements from his cow judging days. But anyway, so he graduated from the University of Maryland via the ROTC program. So that obviously got him into the military for, I guess, what at that time was probably, 4 years, I'm guessing, 4-year service. He went in, I believe, 1954. And he, right off the bat, pretty much started going into like logistical areas. I'm probably not going to have the right sequence here, but he went into like the Seward Air Force Base. I guess he did all the normal pilot training. Let's see, I can't remember all the details as far as where exactly he did all that. I think it's Fort Stallings in Texas or something. But they spent quite a bit of time at Seward Air Force Base, and 2 assignments there. One, and this is obviously from the family perspective, so everything is based on who was born where. So I already had one sister at that point by the time they got to Seward the first time. My second sister was born at Seward, and at Seward, I guess that's probably what sealed his fate as far as heading in the logistics area, because at that point in time, I think it was still 123s at Seward. He was part of the 314th, I believe. Then they were at Seward for a couple years. Like I said, one sister was born there. Then they went to Okinawa back in like 58, 59 to 61. And then they went back to Seward, which is where I was born. I had 2 brothers born over in Okinawa. Having read several military history books, as I think I mentioned to you before this interview started, I can now see where, and this is true I'm sure of everybody, where they initially got assigned kind of, I hate to say seals their fate, but drives the direction of their career. And in his case, that was logistics. And I now know, I think I was mentioning to you before the interview started, that part of my interest is having discovered how little I know actually of my father's career. So I have subsequently read lots of military history books. I mean, some that fit into his time period, some that don't. And I've since learned that really, from what I can gather, that he was in Okinawa, like I said, I was 58 or 59 to 61. I say that because that's when my brothers were born. And apparently he was there during some, and part of some, well, let's call it sneaky stuff. I have no idea what that was. Apparently it was some sort of E-flight stuff. Again, that's the extent of what I know about it. So anyway, so he was there, and like I said, he did mention several times that he'd done some, what he called sneaky stuff, but he never really went into a lot of details, and not knowing what to ask, didn't really kind of, drill him on that. After Okinawa, he went back to Seward, and I'm probably getting my history wrong, but at some point, Seward got the C-130s, and that tended to be his he flew C-123s, 119s, but he was at Seward, I think, when Seward got, got the 130. So he was in at the very ground floor, so to speak, on the 130 effort. So he was always very closely associated with the C-130. Let's see. So Seward. So I was born in '62. He actually did some sort of immediately prior to me being born. He did some sort of tour in layouts, TDY. Again, don't know much about that other than, he just said he flew people around and stuff around and that kind of thing. So that I guess that was while he was at Seward, or not really sure. As a military brat, you don't really pay attention to details. Trying to think where we went after that. To be honest, I don't know. I don't remember how long we were at Seward, but he went to his official Vietnam tour was 66 to 67. He was with the first. He was assigned to the first. Attached to the first Cav. So he went to On-K. So he was there. I guess that was your standard 1-year tour that you do when you go there. So he was there 66 to 67 with the first Cav. I know he was very proud of that. I know the first Cav's got a lot of history behind it, and he's, like I said, he was very proud of that service. And when he was there, some of his later to be very close associates, Colonel Ellington, later to be Colonel Ellington and later to be General Sadler, were with him at the same time, and they started. They were working with later General Moore, William Moore. He was always very closely assigned. I think General Moore was one of his mentors. And when they were over in Vietnam, they started. Well, I say started. They were on the ground floor of starting the. I hope I say this right. Tactical Airlift Liaison Officer, the TALO. They literally were, I think General Moore's like, you guys figured this out. I mean, you're kind of I think they were called them transport control officers or some such thing before they were TALOs. Probably get some of my facts and my history wrong. But, so he was at the ground floor of that. I mean, I think, because of where he happened to be and, fortuitous assignments, I guess you could say, he was at the forefront of the C-130, he was at the forefront of the Tactical Airlift Liaison Officer effort. Got done with the Vietnam, and all I remember is we were in San Antonio, Randolph Air Force Base. Don't really know what he was doing there. I mean, that could, as a kid, you don't, just know where you were base-wise, and don't really pay too much attention to, what your dad's doing, other than he's in the Air Force. You kind of figured that would cover it. Let's see. So what did he do after that? I think I obviously wrote down some of the later things, and I'm sure I'm not going to get the right order of things. So we were at Randolph Air Force Base. We actually were at Scott Air Force Base twice. That was another place that we were there. The first time we were there would have had to have been in the early 70s. We were there for probably 9 months before we moved. Actually, before he got to be, I'm sorry, I left one out. Norton Air Force Base. Let's see, that was, I should have gone by my grades, because we were when I was in third grade, we were at Norton Air Force Base in California. And I'm trying to go off memory what I wrote down that he did there. He was, I forget.
You want to see this?
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't remember what his role there was. Let's see, where's the part that it talks about all that? Oh. Norton. Okay, so he was the Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations at Norton, and then later became the Vice Commander at Norton. And then that's when we moved to Scott Air Force Base the first time. The one that was for just a quick I call it 9 months. It was not even a school year. And there he was initially Director of Assignments, which is, that's a pretty big deal. And, I've heard some stories subsequent to him passing. He passed away in 2013. That he was very good or very helpful to a lot of people in navigating your way to the assignment that you prefer. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I mean, here's the kind of stepping stones it's going to take for you to get to the type of assignment that you're ultimately looking for. So he helped a lot of people navigate that, I guess, that part of the Air Force. So we were there fairly briefly the first time, and that was, I believe at that time it was Headquarters MAC, Military Airlift Command. When we left there, his assignment was to be the wing commander of the 374th, which was at that time at CCK, Taiwan, which is why I'm here at this reunion. Since that was supposed to be, and this is a child's memory, it was supposed to be a relatively short assignment, meaning 12 months or so. So my mother opted not to take there were 5 kids in the family, so not to take us in and out of school, because of course his assignments never coincided with the start and ending of a school year, of course. So she opted not to go with him, and for that matter, I've heard quite a few times since I've been here that the CCK assignment was unaccompanied. So I don't know if that would have been true for him or not, but so we actually went for the first time ever. We lived with my mother's side of the family, which was in New Jersey of all places. So for the first time ever, we got to be in civilian life. So that was kind of, and around relatives. So that was kind of interesting for us. But it ended up being, because it was, if you want to say fortuitous or not, he happened to be, I don't know if you want to say the right place at the wrong time, or, but he was there at the end of the Vietnam War. So he was there, and I think that started in '73. He went to CCK in '73. So his one-year assignment took him into '74, obviously. Then things started happening. His tour got extended. It ended up he was there for like 2.5 years, as it turned out. So he was there, I guess I like to think about it, he was at the very beginning of the Vietnam War with the layouts assignment. He had a 66 to 67, call it standard tour of Vietnam. And then he was there at the very end, literally, as Saigon fell. He was the, whatever you call it, he was the wing commander of the 374th when he got to CCK in 1973. It was already a planned effort to, I guess, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, but to move certain operations that were housed at CCK. I think the fighter wing went to Kadena, and I guess I'm going to call it the airlift wing, went to Clark. That was something that was already in motion, I guess, from some political decision that had been made, like a year before or so. So he was there for that. So he was the one that was, I guess, in charge of making those things happen. So he moved to Clark when the wing, and again, I'm assuming the 374th moved from CCK to Clark. He moved and kind of home-based out of Clark, which, I'm assuming you would know that that's a whole lot of CCK and Clark were both all about Southeast Asia activities. So he was kind of at the heart of all that was happening airlift-wise at the very end of the Vietnam War. So he was he was part of Operation Homecoming. I guess he must have been, well, I guess it was a fairly short-lived effort, obviously, to get the folks out of there. But he was part of Operation Homecoming, as I understand it, and that was like it has been for several of the folks that I've talked to here that were part of it. Very, very proud moment for anybody that was involved in that. Let's see.
Do you happen to know what his specific roles were or anything? Okay.
Sadly, no. But so when things started going real south, particularly in Cambodia, with the Khmer Rouge, he was 374th commander at wing commander at Clark. Then he does what I guess a TDY or a temporary assignment to UTPAL to go sort of handle. And this is probably the only operation name besides Operation Homecoming that I can think of is the Scoot supplying Cambodia out of Thailand. And then Scootsie supplying Cambodia out of Thailand contract extension. I got that from him, by the way. So one thing I finally got around to asking him, because I saw it in his bio. So he was at UTPAL TDY from his initiating responsibilities as the 374th Wing Commander to, I guess, handle the airlift that associated with the Project Scootsie. But then, unfortunately, that didn't go well. So, unfortunately, the Khmer Rouge, kind of won out, so to speak. So he, I guess, as far as I know, returned to his duties as the 374th back at Clark, and so he was also heavily, and I believe he was the ground commander or the whatever, on-scene commander, whatever you want to call it, for the evacuation of Saigon. My understanding was he literally was in Saigon as part of the, evacuation effort, overseeing it, etc. I know he mentioned, and I'm kind of jumbling around, I'm sure here, but I know he also mentioned the Maiguez incident at the very, very end of the Vietnam War. He I guess his role, or his area's role at that point, I think, was, as he just said something about dropping some bombs. I don't know that he was part of the initial rescue effort or any of the other stuff, but I think he made some comment about my guys dropped the bombs to, I don't know, whatever's involved in that. After that assignment, after the whole CCK Clark Vietnam War's over, we returned to Headquarters MAC, which was at Scott Air Force Base. So we returned there, and lo and behold, we were there for like 6 years. We'd never been anywhere that long. But he had multiple assignments while we were at Scott Air Force Base, Headquarters MAC that time. His initial one was Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. Then he was Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel, then Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. All of that was at Scott Air Force Base. And then his last assignment, so that would have the year I graduated, so that would have been 1981. As I was graduating high school, heading off to college, he and my mom moved down to MacDill Air Force Base. He was going to be the Director of Deployment for the Joint Deployment Agency, which I know has morphed into some other name at this point. But that was his final assignment, was there at MacDill Air Force Base. And so like I said, they moved down there in 1981, and he retired, I believe, in 1984. I think I put that on here. Yeah, I think it was 1984. Yes.
Okay. Wow. So pretty pretty extensive career there. So I want to go back and just touch on a little more detail. If we can. So do you know at any point in your conversations with your father, do you know what got him interested in flying at all?
Not so much flying. Again, I don't know how they determine what your MOS is. I don't know what's involved in that, but it seemed like, and I could be wrong, but it seemed like the initial flying, to be a pilot was either just everyone's aspiration. Everyone was shooting for the stars, right? Everybody wants to be a pilot. So until you can't be a pilot, I'm trying to think when he was there, I think they were also trying to get, that would have been in the 50s, mid-50s. I don't know I don't know. So I don't know that he necessarily, other than just I would assume that all red-blooded males going into the service would want, the Air Force, would want to fly. So I just assume that. But I will say that as far as his decision to stay in, I know I've seen newspaper articles, and my mother said it too, he says he was just having so much fun. He was seeing the world, he was enjoying what he was doing. Somebody once asked, after my father passed, someone once asked my mother, was he disappointed that he wasn't like a fighter pilot, or, because again, if you, not only do you want to aspire to be a pilot, but who, of course, what do you want to be as a fighter pilot? She's like, honestly, no, he seemed to really enjoy the, I can't remember the word she used, but the challenge of the cargo. Not so much, and certainly not to minimize any other pilots, but it wasn't just fly here, come, your mission is to do this and this. I think he enjoyed, especially obviously as he got to know more of the surrounding duties, but the bigger challenge, I guess he viewed it as more of a puzzle. A little bit more of a puzzle to do the logistical airlift and that type of stuff. I think he enjoyed, and she said he never looked at it that way, or she never got the impression that he looked at it as my second choice. It was always his. Well, he just enjoyed what he was doing, so he didn't think it in terms. Like I say, he's more of a look forward kind of guy.
Sure.
Unless I have a reason to stop and pause, I'm full steam ahead.
Yeah.
So that was really more his perspective. So as far as how and why he got into flying, I really don't know, other than I assume that anybody going into the service would, kind of shoot for that.
Now, do you know, was any of his family, like siblings or his parents, were they prior military?
Not that I know of. He was one of 3 kids. He was the only boy, so certainly no siblings there. I think there was a brother-in-law that was also in service, but no, I think again he was ROTC. I mean, they were short on funds, so I think that was the financial benefit of being an ROTC is what kind of directed that decision. That decision, yes. So no, I don't think the only thing I remember him relaying is that when he went off to Vietnam, that was a traumatic moment for his parents. This is their only son going off to Vietnam. Just any parent, I'm sure. But his father gave him advice that I believe he took, which also suggests that his father might have had some service history that I'm unaware of. But his father said to him, as he was going off to Vietnam, he said, "You get some gnarl nut sergeant. You get their ear. You learn everything you can from them, and you follow it." And I think that I can't really speak to his assignments and what he did and all of that, but I think his philosophy I can speak to a little bit, and it appears his philosophy from again, not that he sat around the kitchen table talking about it, but really more from the stories that I hear and the stories that I hear from people that work with him is his philosophy is very much how do I say it? Success doesn't happen at the top. So kind of going back to what his father said to him, success, is certainly a team effort, and it doesn't start at the top. I think he very much appreciated that success starts at the bottom. Now again, he never said that, but I would say based on what I've heard of him, I mean he very much considered it, and he did say this. I mean he was a facilitator. He would never say that he was the boss or anything else. He's much more a facilitator. Whatever it took to accomplish or to achieve success in the mission for his guys, and he loved calling his he loved and respected them as much as they did him. So I think his philosophy was definitely and it speaks a little bit to what his dad said to him. The sergeant, you go find someone who's been there, done that, and you get their ear, you listen to what they're saying, and you follow it.
Right.
Because they live this long, so So I think that's got a lot of truth to it.
Yeah, those are actually
a
very
lot of
wise
truth.
words. Yeah. Really
So it also suggests that my grandfather might have had some service history or something. I'm not aware of it, but he might have.
Sounds like he has at least some good understanding about it. Now, with all of these assignments and stuff like this, man, there's a lot here. Now, and I don't know if you can answer this, but I feel like this is a question that typically comes up with military service members, especially those that end up being lifers. You've expressed several times that your father obviously was a forward-thinking person. With him going into ROTC, do you know, did he intend to be a lifer, or
no?
Did that just
he
end
did
up
not.
happening?
I can actually answer that. No,
Okay.
He did not. His father and mother were both in the banking industry, and they wanted him to. Actually, he was going to be a farmer. He was going to be a farmer. That came from my mother as well. So no, his intention was not to be in the service, but obviously he was fulfilling his ROTC obligations, and in the course of doing that, like I said, I remember seeing an article. I can't remember where he was in his career when he said it, but he just was having a good time and decided there's no point in getting out. So, no, but he was not. I think he very specifically was not going to be a lifer. So, whether it fits in at this time or not, I don't want to lose sight of this little anecdote from when he was. I believe it was a grade school teacher. My father's Polish, of which he was very proud, believe it or not. And there was one of his, I believe it was one of his grade school teachers that said he would never be anything but a Polish ditch digger. So clearly she was mistaken. And so clearly, you can't judge a book by its cover, I guess, and you just never know what will happen later in life. So I think he was your run-of-the-mill kind of, Gabby Gus, little talkative kid, and, by all accounts, always was super popular, very much a people person. And sometimes that falls out of favor with the teachers. So apparently she didn't see that side of him.
Wow.
So, but it was just amusing to hear that. It's like, really? First of all, I'm mortified that a teacher would say that, but okay.
That's pretty incredible. Now he made it all the way to the rank of
a 2-star major general.
Major general.
Yeah.
Now with that in mind, his moving up in the ranks, his moves, you said, were more incidental in the fact that he happened to be in the right place at the right time, having to be the guy that would just take the job that needed to be done. In that sense. Do you think, or do you know, at some point did he have a goal? Did he set a goal and intend to make rank at this position?
I don't know. I certainly never heard him, talk like that. I'd be a little surprised, just from my own professional experience, I would be a little surprised if once you get to a certain point, that you don't start thinking in those terms. But he certainly never said anything like that, and I never got that impression. But I would be a little surprised if your brain doesn't start, and then you come to know that here's what you need to, what you do. I think, in my comment about being in the right place at the right time, I mean, obviously he didn't control any of that. And I say that more now in hindsight, of course. You don't necessarily know it at the time, but I can see now, having read what I read, as far as the history of air mobility and that kind of thing, that it's like, wow, I can see that he was close to or at, the eye of the storm, so to speak, at some pivotal moments. Not that he was the only one, but I also think, not only because he's the kind of guy, but he made the most of it. I mean, I think he was, clearly he was game for anything, clearly, from some of the things I've heard.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's because, moving into making just a colonel slot. I mean, that's a very hard slot to make. Right. Even once you even make colonel to even make general,
right?
I mean, you have to be intentional about those kinds of things. And I know, for instance, I was a military brat myself,
right?
And things that my dad told me about the military and some of the life lessons that were put on me, he was always be the guy that's willing to do the job that nobody else is willing to
right.
do. And it seems like that, there might be some of that same mentality in your father, if he was happened to be the guy that was there. That
I think that's 100% true.
Yeah.
I think that's 100% true. Although especially early on, I don't know that it was with a direct beeline thought of, I'm going to do this to get promoted. I specifically think that's not true, based on some of the things I've heard. But yeah, you're right. Based on some of the the understanding of how the military works and the grading system and all that. I mean, clearly, you would probably have to be intentional at some point. Because you're going to have to get out, right? So, so yes, I would think at some point you are incentivized to make it more conscious of a decision as far as what you're going to do. But certainly back in the day, I mean, he was fortunate. I don't know if you know the name Heine Adderholt. I didn't mention him down in there, but he worked for him on a couple different scenarios. Actually, that's probably what started my passion. Is Heine Adderholt has a book written about him called Air Commando 1, and he gave copies of the book because my father's mentioned it in a couple times in the book, and he gave copies of it to my dad, and my dad gave them to us. And so I read it, and that sort of like, gosh, I forgot how much I like to read, and believe it or not, I love reading military history. So that really is what kind of started my whole passion. And the fact that my father was mentioned several times in there was, again, what kind of got my juices going, how did I not know any of this? I mean, not even close to understanding this. You know, I mentioned before that, you know, he never really talked about it. I can't remember if it was, I don't think it was Heine Adderhold, it might have been General Moore. You know, speaking of those two in particular, I think those two in particular, very, very, very well regarded individuals within the airlift community. He happened to be aligned with them. I mean, you know, he to kind of have worked for them clearly was a boon to his career. But obviously he had to perform when he was there, or, you know, working for them. But I mean, those two have a very high reputation within the Air Force, and I think he was with them at pivotal moments in their careers. And you know, everybody needs help, and I think, you know, say he helped their careers, but he didn't hurt their careers. You know, having good people around you, sure, obviously, is a good thing. So I think he endeared himself to them; they endeared himself to him. I mean, you know, I think it was a good alignment and partnership, and he thought the world of both of them. But back to my story, I can't remember which one it was. Many years later, he was speaking very highly. You can tell from his demeanor that he was speaking with highest respect of whichever one it was. And he made the comment that they were an Order of the Sword recipient, which of course I had no idea what that was. And my mother, who happened to be in the room, she's like, well, so were you. Again, had no idea. Apparently it's the highest award that enlisted folks can bestow on their officers. Had no idea. And he was nowhere going to be mentioning that in context of himself if it weren't for my mother being in the room. And she's like, well, so are you. I mean, you know, in fact, he was an Order of the Sword recipient before whichever one it was. So I don't want to say he dismissed it, but he was speaking of in high reverence for the other individual, and he's like, yeah. And again, it's not that he's overly modest, but it just never occurred to him. To mention, and honestly, if he had, I would have gone, yeah, that's nice. But you know, it actually did cause me to go, you know, kind of Google it and go, oh, wow, that's kind of a big deal.
Right.
So anyway, and I know he was extremely proud of that. He's from all accounts very well regarded by his men, and I know that was important to him. I think that's that's where a lot of his reputation centers around how those that worked for him felt about him. And believe me, it was reciprocated. I mean, he loved the heck out of his guys. But the feeling was reciprocated. And that's probably one of the other reasons why I, feel, I don't want to say compelled, but feel compelled to sort of figure out some of these pieces. I hope this doesn't sound bad, but when people would come up to me and tell me they loved my father and I hope this doesn't sound bad, but I'm like, why? He was a great father. I'm not saying that, but it's just, it made me want to know why. It made me want to know why, what about him? I mean, some people grown men crying in some cases. I mean, tears, don't get me wrong, tears. Very, very seriously moved by my father. So I just feel somewhat compelled to try to understand that. So that's part of the reason I come to events like this and continue to do some research and try to understand it. But I think, from what I can gather, I think the overwhelming reason is because he felt for them the way they felt of him. And he would never ask them to do anything that he wouldn't do himself, that he in fact didn't do themselves. I mean, I think he's, my brother, actually, I think I mentioned was in the Army. And he, by virtue of his, this is kind of odd, by virtue of his service in the Army, learned of things about my father who was in the Air Force. Because there's a lot of my father did a lot of joint activities. But, and I'm not a very good storyteller. My brother's a much better one. But my brother was saying that in an Army leadership course, my father's mentioned in the book. I mean, in an Army leadership course,
Yeah.
he's mentioned, because he was with the 1st Cav, which is an Army unit, and I believe this, whatever scenario they were illustrating in the book was from that time period, I believe. But it was very much, and I'm probably not going to say this right, this is just an example, not the actual example, but something along the lines of, if a ditch needed digging, he's right there with you. I mean, that's a small example, but back then, I mean, that would have been in the 60s, mid-60s, you know, that was, you know, there was certainly a time where leaders are supposed to be, you know, back here and not so much up there. He was very much a lead from the front, you know, follow me kind of guy, from what I gather. So anyway, so I think that's my take on the love and respect that people have for my father is, well, first of all, it's reciprocated. As I assure them, it was reciprocated. He felt just about them as they did of him. So, and I think that's why.
That's good. So you said he's commonly referred to as Bagger.
Bagger, that's right.
And how did he get that?
As far as I know, because Baginski is his last name, so I can only assume that it's just a shortened, it's his shortened version, because apparently it used to be Bags. Earlier on it used to be Bags, and then so somewhere along the line it became Bagger, the Bagger. So I don't know if it's just, you know, that's how he wanted everyone to know him, just call me Bagger. So, and he was. I mean, that's how everybody knew him. If you say Baginski, they might be a little thrown off.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, so just a couple last minute questions here. You mentioned that he was a great father.
Yeah.
Really good father. I know from experience, you know, fathers being in the military and stuff like that, it can be pretty hard for them to play both roles at times and come back and, you know, try to be the dad again and where they've been gone for a while. How did this work in relationship with your father? How did he come back and leave work at home and try to reintegrate back into the family?
I'm the youngest of the 5, so maybe I'm also the most clueless of the 5, but I feel maybe my 2 brothers, being the males of the family, maybe they were more affected by his absences than I was. But I never even noticed, I'm not saying I didn't notice he was gone, but I didn't, you know, notice he was gone. So, and I don't mean that to sound bad, but so he was, the longest he was gone was, well, obviously Vietnam was a year-long assignment, but I was only 4. So I remember, you know, your dad's coming back, and for me, you know, I was 5, let's just say I was 4 when he left. I'm like, okay, at that age, I don't even know what that means. Your dad's coming back, yeah, whatever. I don't remember his reintegration ever being any kind of an issue. I was older when he went to CCK in Clark. At that point, I was probably, that was in the earlier 70s, so I was like 10. You know, so it's definitely older. And of course, everyone else and all the other siblings are older. The oldest sister was already out of high school, and then the other one was in high, you know, so obviously I was in, I don't know, whatever, 5th or 6th grade, and everybody else was, you know, 7th, 8th, whatever. I honestly don't remember it ever being an issue, or awkward, or really anything. I mean, and we didn't, you know, as far as working at home, no. It was, you know, our vacations were moving from one place to the other. So, you know, there wasn't really any, you know, there wasn't really anything to it. I mean, it's like there wasn't any need to reintegrate. I don't remember there being any kind of a process. Now, obviously, my mom might have a different viewpoint on that. But no, I will say one, you know, I mean, he was very much of a be here now. I mean, which is an expression I heard from my professional life. Which I actually think is quite relevant. Is, you know, wherever he is where he is. It's where his brain is. It's, you know, that was then, this is now. You know, here's what we're doing now. Look forward looking. We're here now. What we're doing is we're moving from A to B, moving households from A to B. When I get to B, I'm going off to do my job. You know, once he got past the Clark assignment, Everything else was largely, short stint. I mean, there were no more like away assignments. There weren't any other, remote assignments. I mean, not to say he didn't travel a lot. Of course he did. He might have been gone for a week to do something, and who knows what he was doing. But I mean, they were much shorter assignments. We were at Scott for 6 years in a row. He was there for 6 years in a row, other than, of course, these intermittent, normal, like he would in a normal professional life. So he was clearly gone a lot, even when he was at Scott for 6 years in a row. He travels a lot, so he was gone a lot. But the man had more energy than I ever did. Even in his 70s and 80s, I mean, honest to God, it was hard to keep up with him. So he needed no time to recoup. Whenever he came through the door, it was all about what's happening. I mean, literally, that's one of his expressions, what's happening. Meaning, get me up to speed on the household situation. And I mean, more personable than that, but, what's happening? What's going on? What do you need? Very much a problem solver. You may not even have a problem when he's trying to solve it. I mean, he's just that kind of guy. He would always try to hit, my brother played soccer, try to, wherever possible, go to every single game, be involved, very much on the sidelines, that kind of a very involved to the extent he can be, considering his pretty consistent absences, but he's involved as you could reasonably expect him to be, because he, like I said, he appeared to need no downtime between events. or duties or responsibilities or anything like that.
Oh, that's cool. It's very cool. All right, and I think just the last question I have is really what. It's crazy. It's just, I think, getting louder. But
I don't know what we're next to.
Yeah, I don't know either. But I guess what is the most lasting impression that your father left on you?
Boy, that's a great question. Positive. I mean, my father was all about there's nothing you can. I mean, he never actually said these words, but he was very much lead by example kind of guy, and apparently that works. I mean, against all odds, it really does work. I mean, there's again, without really saying anything, I feel like, and I don't mean to leave my mom out of this either, but I feel like he instilled a lot of, there's nothing I can't do. It never occurred to me that I can't do something. If all you would need to do is work, I mean, you got to work towards it. You got to, it's your own efforts that are going to get you there. But virtually, I guess I feel like he instilled a lot of self-confidence, a lot of positivity, a lot of, there's just nothing you can't do without ever actually saying the words. Interestingly enough, I feel like having been I'm now retired, but having been a manager / supervisor for a good chunk of my professional career, which had nothing to do with the military, I actually feel like a lot of my managerial style came from him, which is odd. Again, without having said a word, I feel like, I mean, a couple times in my professional career, I kind of smiled going, I feel like I'm my dad. I feel like, believe me, I didn't have quite the love and devotion, but I had a fair amount, actually. And I really do feel like I got a lot of my managerial style from him. I feel like I got a lot of my positive outlook on life, let's solve the problem. Let's not get too worried about the problem. It's only a problem. There's, he later in his life, well after retirement, and he did consulting, but well after that, he was. It's a simple little phrase, but whatever it was, let's just say it was the coffee machine. He's like, I'm smarter than this coffee machine. I'm going to figure it out. I mean, it's a simple little thing, but it's. How very electronic some of these coffee machines got, and even the washers and dryers of the world are sometimes a little crazy. But I would sometimes chuckle when he would say that. He's like, nope, I'm smarter. Nope, I'm smarter than this coffee machine. Like somehow he needed to convince it that was true. So there was really nothing, nothing he couldn't solve, and I feel like I kind of got that from him. That you just kind of break things down and problems down and. Smaller bits, and people have solved these problems, well, not these problems, but people have solved problems for forever and ever, and they'll be doing it going forward. So just break it down and you can do it.
That's great. Well, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate you sharing your father's story. Yeah, so with that, this concludes our, unless there's anything you think that needs to be added?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I think, like I said, I'm short on details. Short on details of the actual career, but I hope I did justice to the rest of the soft part of his career.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, with that, this concludes our interview. Thank you very much, Amy.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.